Well, hello everyone. We are back from hiatus. So back a little bit early because we are coming on the air to do a emergency podcast here on C-Trace Sports. We were originally planning to end our summer break right around mid to late August just to get back into the groove of things with college football and basketball and hockey season starting. But the college football world is just absolutely shattered right now, so much to the point that we'd be remiss if we weren't to talk about it. Caleb Bushy here, alongside Sam Valenti, who is joining me from your hometown, Texas. I'm coming to you guys from Arizona. And Sam, literally Friday, August 4th, 2023, this will go down as the Pac-12 apocalypse or the nasty divorce or whatever you want to call it, the worst day in more than 100 years of this conference. And by June of next year, whenever the academic year officially ends, this conference is essentially going to be gonzo as it looks right now. What are your thoughts about this? I mean, especially because you're a current student and going into, freshman year, you would have never forecasted this to even be a possibility.
Yeah, not in a million years. Not in a million years, man. It's crazy. It is really crazy how just how things have turned out this way, just the way things have just changed so suddenly. And it's interesting because, obviously as an ASU student, there was already going to be a new era in Tempe this upcoming year with the new Kenny Dillingham era. It was already things were going to be changing. There was going to be a big change in the first place. But it's crazy. I mean, who would have thought that this upcoming year is going to be the last season of the Pac-12 as we know it, and of course ASU in the Pac-12, and then who would think that after this upcoming season that we're going to have this year, ASU is going to be in the Big 12? Who would have seen this coming? Along with, of course, now U of A and Utah. It's crazy. It's like I said, man. Like I've been saying. Before I went to ASU before freshman year, I could not have never imagined that this would happen at all. But here we are. It's crazy. We're in this new era of super conferences, and it's crazy. So
Yeah, and to recap, we'll do a little quick refresher on how we got to this point. Other than breaking down years of mismanagement by this conference that has unfortunately happened. But where it really started was, USC and UCLA, their contracts are coming up, and they made the shocking announcement that they were going to jump to the Big Ten, despite the fact that the Big Ten didn't have any teams even geographically close to them. There's going to come with a lot of travel expenses, but they were willing to pull the trigger because they unfortunately kind of made it clear from the vibes that all the fans were getting that they wanted out the Pac-12. And that was a huge shock. And then all of a sudden, after weeks, the Pac-12 finally decides, you know what, we'll actually open the expansion and search for teams that probably won't be a legitimate replacement because no one's ever going to replace USC and UCLA. But, whatever we have, we'll take what we can get. And unfortunately, that fell through. San Diego State tried to leave the Mountain West, but it turns out the exit fees were just too much for them to handle financially. And now we're getting to the point, I think, where it all kind of was the tip of the iceberg was this media rights deal. And I guess that's the first thing we'll talk about because this media rights deal, they said, by the end of the academic year, we're going to get this done. Then it's like, well, let's wait another month. And then by the time Media Day was held in Las Vegas a couple weeks ago, they made it clear we're not going to announce anything, but we have something in the works. And by delaying this announcement, our value goes up. I believe that's what George Kliakoff said, the commissioner. And that raised a lot of red flags. Even someone who worked with the Fox Sports regional networks even commented, if I was still in the sports rights business, I would want to look at what's the stability like with this conference, because this is not the best way to demonstrate that. And so, yeah, it was very frustrating. The thing is, though, I think with the Big 12, they've been in a very similar situation. They were going to lose Texas and Oklahoma, but literally 2 or 3 weeks later, after that major bombshell dropped, you already heard reports that BYU, Cincinnati, and UCF were already finalizing, or at least in the process of submitting applications to join the Big 12. For the Pac-12, literally, I believe after a couple weeks, they literally just issue a statement, oh, we're going to open up to expansion. They were just too slow. And literally, this is what happens when you wait too long. Some schools start getting impatient, and then all it takes is for one team to leave, and then it just starts to like knock down dominoes, and that's essentially what happened. But they had a lot of options. It was clear that ESPN and Fox, which I believe is their current broadcasters, they weren't willing to come back or at least give them the amount of money that they wanted. So they had to get experimental. They were going to probably talk with, well, actually, we do know this. They were going to sign a deal with Apple TV Plus, which they're kind of in the sports broadcast business right now. They have a Friday night baseball package with the MLB. They're also doing MLS soccer, and we all know the stuff with Messi, that huge content that they're doing for them. So they're already very well experienced in sports broadcasting, and sports fans have already been to that destination to watch events. But unfortunately, that fell through. There were some other options like the CW. A lot of folks thought, hey, just because this is the channel that Riverdale is on, all that, why should we take this seriously compared to like NBC and all that? And the reason is because the CW is under completely new leadership. They're under a completely different owner. Warner Bros. And Paramount do not co-own the network like they do anymore. It's run by Nexstar Media, and they made it clear they want to transform the network into broadcasting more live sporting events. So there was unfortunately a lot of unnecessary criticism towards a network that a lot of people thought had an image that they were trying to get out of. And then there was Ion Television, which they're trying to get into sports broadcasting. They just did a WNBA Friday night TV deal, which they're airing right now as we speak. They had a lot of options, but I think they just got too picky. They wanted to go with the veterans. And ultimately, it's one of those situations where you just got to take what you can get. And then they were just in denial. It just didn't work out. And now we're seeing the collapse unfold in front of our eyes. I mean, what are your thoughts about that with the media rights deal? I mean, this was dragged out to death. It could have been unnecessary. It could have been avoidable.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. It would have been, the whole Apple thing. It's kind of interesting because, like you mentioned, Apple, they've been getting into sports stuff. Obviously, the MLS stuff, is massive right now with Messi, and I remember reading how like I want to say it's called like MLS League Pass. I'm not sure, but I think like along those lines, that's the title of it. I think the subscribers, has like gone up a ton. So, Apple is seeing great success there. You got those MLB games and stuff. So it's not like, Apple, doesn't have experience, and they're doing quite well. But having like the Pac-12, I just don't think, I don't think that would have, I just don't think that would have worked. And I mean, I don't know. It's very interesting, and it's interesting to see how the like how the media rights are gonna come about, like kind of now and everything, like this massive expansion. And I think you made a tweet about this, and I really liked the idea of this. And of course, this is more specifically about ASU, but the possibility of and this with all the, of course, RSN stuff. You got the D-backs and like all these controversies with Bally. And now the Suns are on local TV. Well, you said that ASU could possibly have some games on like 3 TV, like they were back in the day. And I think that is very, very intriguing to me. I think I'd like to see that because I know that there's a lot of ASU fans that had a ton of difficulty with Pac-12 network and getting those and being able to watch those games.
Yeah, so to elaborate on that, because I know there's a lot of response on that tweet. So the Big 12 Conference does have two national TV partners. It is Fox and ESPN, essentially what the Pac-12 has now. So this kind of wouldn't be any different when it comes to transitioning national TV partners for ASU, U of A, and Utah over to the Big 12. And then I believe there is a streaming rights deal. So any games that don't get picked up by national TV and would essentially fall as a tier 3 or local broadcast would air on ESPN Plus. The only problem that fans have with that is that it is streaming and all that. That's more of something that you view on a laptop, all that, which I know doesn't really sit well with quite a lot of fans. But I will say, I mean, if this was the deal and they don't end up going to local TV, because it's still a possibility, nothing's official. But if they just go to ESPN Plus, I don't think how much ASU fans would actually appreciate how big of an upgrade this would be, because the business folks that run the Pac-12, not any of the broadcasters or anything like that, more the business execs who run the Pac-12 network, they made it impossible for fans to watch the game with their distribution deals. With DirecTV, they could have made that deal. They didn't want. They were asking for too much. I believe they were only the cable providers or the TV providers they're on now was like Cox or Dish. The problem is though with that, especially, and you saw this with the RSNs, is that it's getting to the point where, well, I can choose this TV provider that has Bally Sports, it has my local teams, or I can choose this TV provider which has Pac-12 Network, but not the other thing. So they made fans choose, and when you do that, you're gonna lose viewers. That's just how it's gonna be. And of course, I think more viewers are gonna go towards the major leagues than college athletics, especially since college football local telecasts. There's probably at least 3 or 4 local broadcasts a year compared to all the national TV attention they get. So, of course, fans are going to choose more major team broadcasts because they're going to get more value into that. That's more games. And as far as ASU possibly going back to local TV, we'll see about that. It sounds like the Big 12 already has a deal in place for them to easily transition to ESPN Plus as like their main option. But who knows? I mean, we don't know exactly the details that Michael Crow and ASU signed with the Big 12 because this TV deal was made at least 2 or 3 years before anyone had any idea that these 4 schools would be coming to the Big 12. But you never really know. Everyone thought, hey, the Suns are leaving Bally Sports, but Bally Sports is issuing a lawsuit. They may end up still being on there after all. And then all of a sudden, I think like 2 or 3 weeks ago, they finally got in the clear and they're going to move to 3TV officially. And the D-backs leaving Bally Sports as well, right around that same time. So anything is possible. But if I had to think the most realistic scenario, it would probably be, at least for now, the football and basketball games will go to ESPN Plus. But that's another thing we can talk about. How does this affect all the other sports? Because, and you know this as a Cronkite student yourself, all the other sports, women's basketball, hockey, volleyball, gymnastics, even baseball, all of those sports are actually student produced by ASU. I don't know how the other schools do it. They probably, if they have journalism schools, but ASU, the Cronkite school, produces those under the Pac-12 network banner, and they live stream it on the Pac-12 site. Obviously, that's going to change sometime very soon. I believe the Big 12 has kind of the same live streaming aspect where they stream it through their conference website and all that. But there's also going to be question of who's going to produce it. Is there going to be a Big 12 network in the future, or is it going to be sub-produced by ESPN? There's all those questions on that kind of opportunity. And not only that, hockey being the biggest one, because they're technically not even going to be part of the Big 12. They're not going to be affected by this at all, especially since they're joining a conference that's more exclusive to hockey. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm sure from your point of view, you would definitely want to see ASU on local television. But like I said, there is some pros and cons to that, because that local station is only available in the Phoenix area. Even if you go down to Tucson, you can't watch that station because that's a different TV market. So you got to at least cater to the out-of-market folks. And if they go the streaming route, it'd probably be the best way. They can't please everyone, but they could probably at least please most of the fan base who want to watch those games from wherever they are. Your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. It's funny how you mentioned I believe it's called the Pac-12 Insider, the stuff that Cronkite does. Well, hey, maybe in my senior year it'll be a Big 12 Insider. You never know. But you mentioned the basketball, and you mentioned how of course this doesn't just affect football. And my first thought, when you brought that up, is I think this is going to be really fun for Bobby Hurley and the ASU basketball program, the men's program, because Big 12, obviously, lots of great basketball in that conference. I mean, to think of schools like Kansas, who ASU beat in 2017 and 2018 in back-to-back years. So there's some history there. But, even schools like Baylor, Texas Tech, Houston, Kansas State as well. Just like, I can go on and on and on. And then you have now U of A being added to that list of another, pretty prestigious basketball program. I think it's going to be really cool. And I think Bobby Hurley is actually pretty excited as well. It's definitely going to be a bit more of, I would say, more of even a challenge for ASU basketball, but it'll be fun having those teams come to Desert Financial Arena. Those will be some fun games to go to.
Oh, I would definitely agree. And that's the biggest thing I'm excited for, at least in my opinion, as a fan. There's going to be a lot more competition, especially in basketball. If you look at the Big 12 and their portfolio of teams that are currently in the conference as we speak, TCU, Texas Tech, Baylor, Houston, Oklahoma State, and Kansas, of course, the biggest one you mentioned, probably their most historic basketball program. This is indeed a basketball conference. And I'm a little worried, is Bobby Hurley and his team prepared for this huge challenge, because it's going to get way more harder to win beginning next season and beyond. So they definitely need to come prepared, and hopefully this last season in the Pac-12, they can really use that time to prepare, and we'll see what happens. This will also be very beneficiary to U of A. I'm sure this is the biggest thing that they're excited for, because they're jumping as well along with the two other schools. The U of A, of course, the biggest thing they're known for is basketball. And I believe they've always wanted to join the Big 12 because there hasn't been much competition in the Pac when it comes to hoops. And you got to believe U of A is going to be a powerhouse, and they're going to have all the big matchups to the point where all the national TV broadcasters are going to want to broadcast any U of A game when it comes to in-conference opponents. They're probably going to get the most attention. As tough as this is for me to admit, U of A is going to get a lot more national TV attention when it comes to this conference jump. They'll probably benefit the most from that, at least in their arsenal.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. But here's something that will kind of suck, because I had the amazing opportunity, and I literally just thought about this. I got to go to the Pac-12 tournament, and the Pac-12 tournament that's a great experience. It's in Las Vegas, so much fun, and unfortunately now it's like unfortunately I can't think off the top of my head exactly where the Big 12 tournament is held. I'm not sure if it's held in the same place every year, if it's in like all rotating. I honestly can't remember, but unfortunately, you won't get that in Vegas, and then the Pac-12 championship that's being held at Legion right now. Well, then that's not going to happen anymore. So like, there's so many of these other things that actually are really cool that they won't be happening anymore. So there's some really awesome stuff to come along with this, but also some things are like, oh man, now we won't have this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry, I thought I had my microphone muted. I guess that's probably going to be the biggest thing I will miss about the Pac-12 is when they moved their football and basketball championships both to Las Vegas. That was probably, at least in the last decade of their work history, that was probably the best thing that could have happened for the conference. Vegas provides amazing hospitality. I feel like there's like over 1,000 hotels just on that strip alone. So it's not hard to get a hotel room there, at least near T-Mobile Arena or Allegiant Stadium. And not only that, the venues itself where they're playing in were just absolutely beautiful as well to experience. Like if you haven't been to Allegiant Stadium or T-Mobile Arena, I definitely recommend it on your bucket list because there are absolute amazing facilities to check out. And just the area around it is also just amazingly well done. And that just also makes me think, I mean, this upcoming football and basketball season will probably be the final time. I mean, unless the Big 12 moves, I don't know if this will happen immediately, maybe sometime down the road, but this will be the last time Vegas will get to host any big conference championships. I mean, they'll obviously get to have the Las Vegas Bowl, and I believe they're finally on the map for March Madness. They might be hosting a couple first round games next year, if not the year after that. But yeah, it is going to be sad to see because Las Vegas was a perfect location to have these events. The Big 12 football championship, because I know you're wondering where they were. Football championship is going to be at AT&T Stadium, at least the last one
Right.
was, were the Cowboys, which I'm sure you have no problem with that because you're a Texas guy.
Yeah, I got no problem with that.
And no, I've never gotten to go to the Cowboys Stadium, even though it's at least more than 10 years old. That stadium has aged very, very well. They've renovated it so much to the point where I'm actually surprised they still haven't hosted another Super Bowl. That's another discussion, though. That stadium is really amazing with Jerry Jones. I mean, it's Jerry World. You can't go wrong with that. And of course, it was so nice that during COVID, when they couldn't hold the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, they actually brought the Rose Bowl there. Which I thought they did a great job. with the timeline that they had to put that together in a very short period. And then, of course, I believe the basketball tournament is in a completely different city, is at the T-Mobile Center. It used to be the Sprint Center in
Hmm,
Kansas City, Missouri,
hmm,
which is also a pretty nice venue. But I'm like, come on. I'm like, Kansas City is great. Nothing against them. It's just like Vegas is the town that you visit. It's more of a vacation city, that fans would love to go to anyways, even if their team got knocked down in the first round. They're like, oh, well, maybe I'll go check out this.
hmm.
Vegas is the place to do that. And there's not really many other landmark sites. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff to see in Kansas City, but I'm just saying comparing Vegas, Kansas City, I'm sure most people would prefer to go to Vegas instead, just off most people's opinions. But that will be tough to see. And like I said, we'll really have to see if the Big 12 will consider maybe moving one of those events to Vegas, or they could do kind of like what the BCS used to do at the national championship, rotating it between 3 or 4 sites every single year so the location's different. I believe the SEC did that for a couple of years. So maybe the Big 12 goes in that direction. You never know. The Big 10 tournament, I mean, I could be wrong on this, but they would usually, from what I remember, alternate the host between Chicago and Indianapolis for the tournament. So it's definitely possible for them to do from a business standpoint. Will they actually do it? Most likely not anytime soon, because this change is happening next year, and stuff like this that's planned usually has to be years and years ahead of time. So they'll return to Vegas, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. They just need to focus on settling in these 4 new schools and make sure they fit in properly by the time they launch in 2024, this next fall. So we'll see where that goes. Moving on to some other topics, and we'll kind of just talk about the history of the Pac-12 here. It's amazing. They've been around for more than 100 years, and it started out as the Pac-8, then the Pac-10, and now the Pac-12. And it's they had all the ingredients to be the most successful conference in college football with the markets. They had Los Angeles, they had Arizona, they had Seattle, the state of Washington, that area, and then of course Oregon became its own powerhouse that we know today, especially thanks to even the Nike brand, which is one of their biggest corporate partners. It is a conference that literally could have been everything, but it just didn't happen. And I think the biggest thing that they could have done better on is just how it was ran. I think their biggest strategy, and a lot of folks are going to point the blame at Larry Scott, the previous commissioner. He kind of positioned the conference to focus more on Olympic sports, like gymnastics, volleyball, and kind of using the Pac-12 schools as like a farming system for future Olympic athletes, which sounds great. The problem is that these student athletes, and rightfully so, they should be doing this. They take advantage of the conference. They'll use all these resources, and they'll be incredibly successful for the Olympics. But what happens after then when they get their gold medals? You think they're going to share any of that profits of the Pac-12? Absolutely not. They're not going to share that popularity, and they shouldn't have to. And the Pac-12, what happens when they do this, at the end of the day, they get nothing out of it, but just probably a thank you from the student athletes. And so it literally just does not make any money compared to the SEC, who invested more in football and basketball because that's where the viewership is at. Now you see them, they're the dominant conference in college football right now. Maybe that could change down the road. But the Pac-12 literally positioned themselves to get taken advantage of when it came to being used as this farming system that just didn't make sense from a business standpoint. They were going to get screwed, and that's where the money started just disappearing. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. So I was reading up on this, and apparently in 2011, I think it was, the Pac-12 actually had a chance to add Texas and OU. And it's crazy looking back on that, because imagine how different things would be, if that had happened. Obviously Texas and OU wouldn't have moved to the SEC, which really was the first domino in what has been going on with all this stuff. But just think for a moment, like imagine how things would be different if Texas and OU had come over to the Pac in 2011. Things would be very different.
And it's not like that deal like kind of fell through. I think Larry, from what I saw in the previous articles, because Old Takes Exposed tweeted this out. It sounded like the Pac-12 literally just turned them down. They're like, no, our bar is just too high for them. Like, we're
Yep.
too good for them. And yeah, it's like, no, you can't have egos like that because that's really going to kill you. And that just burns bridges. Who's going to want to work with inflated egos? And not only that, I believe Larry Scott, at least during his last few years in the Pac-12, he made at least up to $5 million a year. So he was the most paid commissioner at the Power Five, and yet they were valued the less. So, and not only that, there were even some controversies where the executives at the Pac-12 were giving each other bonuses and were spending all this money that didn't need to be spent on. Like, it was just a disaster. They just didn't know what they were doing. And then on top of it, they don't acknowledge that, hey, yeah, we could have done better on this. But there's no acknowledgement on that. It's always, no, we did nothing wrong. And this conference is just in denial. And ultimately, that's what causes it. In just one day, 5 schools all of a sudden completely gone. And this Pac-12 conference is literally going to be is literally in a doomsday scenario in 24 hours. It was inevitable, but this is what happens after. This is a product of over decades, at least in the last decade, of poor business decisions. And yeah, this unfortunately was something that was going to happen, that they just thought, well, if we just prolong this media deal, or we invest more in Olympic sports, all that, things will eventually work out our way. Or even the TV deal, I believe what Larry Scott was intending to do when the TV rights expired, they were actually considering just moving all the games exclusively to the Pac-12 network, because yes, in some ways that would gain a lot of ratings, but then again, a lot of folks can't watch the network, even no matter how great it can be produced. And like I said, they're not, if they're going to have to choose, you're going to make fans choose between their major sports teams on Bally's or whatever local station, or you're going to make them choose college athletics, their local college team. Who do you think they're going to choose? So it's just, there's just a lot of bad business decisions. And still, even today, I believe Oregon State kind of issued a statement that from the athletic director saying this is just so unfortunate. This is killing tradition and rivalries and just over 100 years of hard work at this conference. And it's sad to see these schools kind of just leaving us high and dry. And I believe I can understand why people think that this is like all greed and all that. I think it was more of a situation of, well, we're losing so much money that we just need to get out because this is just a horrible business plan and it's not changing anytime soon. That's, I think, what these schools are trying to do right now, at least with USC and UCLA. And then, of course, Colorado, they specifically stated there was too much uncertainty. Let's just get out while we have the chance. And now that's essentially led to ASU, Utah, and U of A being forced their hand with all this news of Washington and Oregon leaving. So it's just been a hot mess. The last decade of the Pac-12 just really, it was just not great. And I don't think this is any fault on George Kliavkoff. I think there probably is some accountability to go around on this media rights deal taking too long. They prolonged it too long, but who knows? I mean, the damage that was done from the previous resume of the Pac-12 by Larry Scott and the previous commissioner, the damage was so bad that it was practically irreversible, to the point where the conference is pretty much just living on borrowed time. That's the way I'd look at it. And what are your observations, Sam? I know you probably have a difference of opinion with me on these schools being greedy, and of course, like I said, that's understandable because some of these schools don't have the best track record when it comes to being more pro money. So it's definitely okay to have that kind of thoughts, just as the first vibes. What do you make of it?
Yeah. It's for me, as happy as I am that ASU was able to get to the Big 12, overall, I'm really sad about this situation, to be honest. I mean, it's sad to see, like, because when I think of college football, I like college football, when it was like, regional stuff, the rivalries, the traditions, the culture and stuff. And just, in my opinion, I think college football, it's gotten in my opinion, I think it's gotten kind of corporate. And and I have kind of I have some thoughts about that, and I just for me, when I think college football, I just want the culture, tradition, the rivalries, and thank goodness that the U of A ASU rivalry, the Territorial Cup, thank goodness we're still going to have that, because I know that when Texas A&M moved to the SEC, and I guess hopefully we'll be able to get this back again. But I remember, when the A&M Texas A&M Texas rivalry was lost, many people were upset about that. But I guess now we're actually going to get it back, which is great there. But of course, the Bedlam, Oklahoma State, that rivalry. I don't know. Maybe they'll be able to work out some sort of non-conference thing. But unless they somehow do that, that won't be happening anymore. And that's a huge rivalry in Oklahoma, obviously. And so I'm just glad that at least we're gonna have the Territorial Cup, because that is, I mean, there's just so much tradition and of course hate in that rivalry, and that I've been able to experience, as an ASU student. But like I said, just overall, it's sad. It's just sad to see, and just we have like these conferences now. They're just growing so much, and you got like these teams in the East, and now we got these teams in the West. And it's kind of like it's all just over the place. There's no regions anymore, and it's just kind of like what the heck? It's mind blowing. It's crazy, but at the end of the day, as an ASU student, I'm glad that honestly we were able to get out alive, and I just have to almost be just thankful for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's all that matters at the end of the day, especially with all the back and forth ticky tack with ASU considering staying in the Pac-12 amongst all this madness with Washington, Oregon leaving, and then they finally got out. I don't think that announcement was supposed to drop tonight. I think they originally scheduled it in the morning, but I think they dropped it just for the sake of calming everyone down with the ASU fan base, because everybody was raising alarms on social media because there was so much uncertainty. There was panic going on, and rightfully so. I mean, this is the future of Arizona State, a very historic school that's forever engraved in our pop culture. With the Jerry Maguire movie, and Sun Devil Stadium being the birthplace of the Fiesta Bowl, and it's hosted a Super Bowl there. That stadium itself, and this is a whole nother discussion with Sun Devil Stadium, but I'll just mention this. It's literally that stadium laid the groundwork, along with the Rose Bowl too, and not forgetting that. But ASU helped lay the groundwork for West Coast respect in the West Coast when it came to college football, because back then at the time the world revolved around the East Coast when it came to the competitiveness of college football, and they created the Fiesta Bowl to try to break through when it came to West Coast teams, because ASU wasn't getting the proper respect that they were trying to do with Frank Kush. They're like, well, we've had this great regular season record, but we wouldn't get accepted to these bowl games because there's just this stereotype that the West is just weak. And yeah, it's unfortunate to see. I will say the biggest thing I will miss also about the Pac-12 was the Pac-12 network, how it was produced, not how it was run from a business standpoint, but the broadcasters and the people in the production truck behind the scenes, they don't deserve any hate about this. They actually did an amazing job producing that network. Out of all the Power 5 networks, ACC and SEC, they had their networks operated by ESPN. The Big Ten has their network operated by Fox Sports. Big 12 has some resources by ESPN. We talked about that earlier. But the Pac-12 was completely independent. They ran their own show, and it was completely independently run. Something that was never been done before. And the folks that produced it, and just the hosting lineup, Mike Yam, Yogi Roth, Ashley Adamson, Summer Sanders, all these announcers, Anthony Herron, who I believe is now going to be calling Big Ten games on NBC this fall. They had an absolute stellar broadcast group. They had I think, out of all the Power 5 conferences, they produced the best college football and basketball broadcast. It's just a shame nobody could watch it because the business folks made it too hard to watch with TV providers. Your best chance of watching it, if you didn't want to spend money on cable or satellite, was to probably go to like a sports bar like Buffalo Wild Wings to go see the game. But I will say the Pac-12 network, it was an amazing amazingly produced network, and especially
Yep.
for me myself, getting to work Pac-12 streams back at the old Oceanside Ice Arena and of course DFA Desert Financial Arena. It provided so many opportunity to collegiate broadcasters like myself at the time, and for you as well.
Mm,
And who knows, maybe they'll probably transition over to something else. So I wouldn't worry about that. But it was amazing what the Pac-12 network had, and it will probably turn into something of like, well, you never know what you have until it's gone. And I think the Pac-12 network will be that thing. But who knows? Maybe a lot of people won't notice because a lot of people couldn't watch it, sadly. And
yeah.
it's unfortunate. And not only that, you've gotten to interview Ashley Adamson literally like
Yes.
few months ago on
Yeah. Yeah.
one-on-one. And yeah, they were talking about, especially the last year or two, there's definitely been some red flags at the network after they let go of Mike Yam. A lot of their well-known talent that's been with the network since the beginning got let go. It was kind of a sign of the times that the Pac-12 network was going to shut down, and unfortunately, that is going to be the case this year. But who knows? I mean, they have 1 year left. Who knows how they're going to send it off? But I don't think you'll ever find an amazing dedicated crew. Especially, I love how they did After Dark, Pac-12 After Dark. I thought that was amazingly produced branding and all that. So, gosh, this sucks that we're gonna lose that. But who knows? Maybe we'll see. Maybe we could see that transition over to something with a Big 12 network sometime down the road. Some other red flags that the Pac-12 said that they were going to do that they spent a lot of money on, and this kind of ties into the Pac-12 network, what we were talking about, is their headquarters was in San Francisco, specifically to be near all the big tech companies like Apple, Apple, Windows, Microsoft. And unfortunately, none of those deals happened. They spent all that money to try to tie that relationship. What's funny is when they finally moved out of San Francisco and they almost got this TV deal at Apple TV, even that fell through. And so, yeah, it just wasn't great. Another red flag, like I said, the farming system, spending more money, and not only that, giving each other bonuses. It was just, yeah, complete not the way to run a business. And what's funny is I joked about this with a couple friends. It's like everyone's going to be like, oh, like 10 years from now, I'm like, we're going to be telling our kids that there was such thing as a Pac-12 conference. I would take it further than that. I think 10 years from now, 10, 20 years from now, there's going to be college lectures to future business students. And it's going to be like a marketing case study of how not to run a sports business. And the Pac-12 logo is going to be the first thing they see on the PowerPoint slide. It's like the
Yep.
Pac-12, how not to run a sports business. This is their legacy, unfortunately. It's the last thing we want to see. But unfortunately, they couldn't acknowledge mistakes and all that. They were in denial. And ultimately, it just comes to a bitter end, unfortunately. Your thoughts as we kind of close this conversation? Well, obviously, our next thing talking about the Big 12, what's ahead, but the biggest thing you'll remember about the Pacific Athletic Conference.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting you mentioned the lectures. I'm sure the Pac-12's demise is definitely going to be the subject of a lot of Cronkite lectures. I would imagine in the future years. So now that'll be, of course, after I've graduated. But I'm sure for if there's any future Cronkite students watching this, we'll then get ready because you might have some lectures, might have some coursework about the apocalypse. But I just came up with it on the spot. Why not? But
I love it. I love it. It's great.
nice. Well, my favorite memories of the Pac-12. Well, I mean, just the memories that, of course, have just made it ASU. Obviously, like I mean, beating UCLA in 3 overtimes when UCLA was ranked number 3. This was freshman year. Storming the court for the first time, amazing. We had the smallest field storm ever at Sun Devil Stadium when we beat Washington this past season. And it's funny because there was I'm telling you, it was like the smallest field storm ever. It was not a ton of people there, but I was lucky to be one of them. So I mean, like I said, I can go on about the memories of made at ASU, obviously, but just even growing up, watching watching like those USC powerhouse teams, back when I was a little kid, man, and obviously you think about the Rose Bowl having that tradition of being Pac-12 versus Big Ten, and I think that's kind of another thing. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Rose Bowl now. I think we'll see what happens there. And then just a little quick thing, and we might. I'm not sure if you want to talk about this. We can maybe get a bit into the Mountain West and how they kind of figure into this situation. But I grew up as a big Boise State fan. That was my childhood favorite college team, and I would always love when Boise State would upset a big Pac-12 school like they've done it to Oregon a couple times. I don't think Oregon's ever beat Boise State, and they've would play other schools like Wazoo, Oregon State, stuff like that. And then of course Boise State and ASU played in the Vegas Bowl. I think it was like 2011, 2012, something like that. And Boise State won, and I was very happy about that. Did I know I was going to go to the school that Boise beat? Not at all, but that's what happens. Now I'm a Sun Devil, and if that matchup ever happens again, well, then I'll be rocking this. But it's interesting. A lot of great memories watching Pac-12 football over the years, playing NCAA football as well, EA Sports, and just it's sad to see the demise, but. Just one last mention, obviously doing that one-on-one with Ashley, the nicest person ever, a great interview. And, I'm interested to see like what kind of happens with her and, other, Pac-12 crew members, for the network and talent as well, kind of seeing where they go kind of after this and seeing, I'm curious what they're obviously thinking, right now.
Yeah, and yeah, big shout out to all those folks. They are just amazingly talented people, and I have a feeling, there's obviously going to be a lot of uncertainty. They'll obviously still broadcast the football and the whole academic sports season as planned this year. But then after that, who knows? But they got a year to prepare and try to find transitional roles. Part of me wouldn't be shocked if they're involved with like the new TV deals that are happening. We're seeing some new broadcasters coming into the fold. CBS is switching over to Big Ten. NBC is broadcasting college football again. Some Pac-12 broadcasters like Anthony Herron is already attached to call some games this upcoming season because NBC back at the time would only do Notre Dame games. Now they're getting back into the college football business. The CW has a lot of people probably forgot about this. The CW is going to be broadcasting college football anyways because they just signed a third-tier deal with the ACC. So they're getting into the business. Part of me wouldn't be shocked if maybe Ion does. I mean, with the Big Ten growing, I think the way they could handle this tier 3 issue with all these teams being pushed to streaming, I wouldn't be shocked if they could go the ACC route and maybe bringing in a third TV partner to put the games on, at least on a television network where fans can tune the channel to instead of having to go through a web browser or a Roku app to watch the game. So who knows? I mean, that's what the ACC did, and we'll see what happens. But no, it is a shame. But no matter what happens, I mean, with Ashley Adamson, Yogi Roth, all those guys, the unfortunate thing that's going to happen is they're obviously probably all going to have to part ways. They're not going to be all on the same channel again. That's going to be the biggest tough thing to see. But now, and now that we saw this at Mike Ham, I believe he now works at NFL Network. So I think those guys will be fine, but you may not find a dedicated crew like that on the same TV channel. So when it came to college football Saturdays, so fortunate to see. But what's funny is you mentioned the Mountain West. What could happen? What's the kind of the next course of action for the Pac-12, even though it feels like there might not be, with the amount of teams they have left, especially Washington State and Oregon State. I mean, we could see a merger happen. What's interesting is I'm hearing reports that GCU may jump to the Mountain West. The problem with that, though, is that the Mountain West requires football teams, and they don't have a football team yet right now. But that could change, and they've said they want to get into football, so this could finally be the opportunity where we could see college football on Grand Canyon University grounds, which I kind of actually would be interested in seeing. Now, don't get me wrong, we probably have too many college football teams because we got the NEU Lumberjacks and anything. I think if anything, they would probably deserve that opportunity more than GCU because they've been in the long run for a long time. They're in the Big Sky. I'm sure they would want the jump to the Mountain West more than GCU would. But who knows? You never know what could happen. So I'm curious to see how that's all gonna unfold. And yeah, I will say though, looking back though, the time of the Pac-12, especially my college years, I mean, I would say some of my favorite college football and basketball games I went to as a fan, especially doing Camp Fargo and all that, was against Big 12 opponents, like that basketball game against KU, against
Mhm.
Kansas Jayhawks. They were a Big 12 team. So if anything, we're going to get to see more of that competitiveness.
Yeah.
But if I had to be specific towards the Pac-12, um, I will say, I mean, college years, the year we beat Washington, I think we beat Oregon and Washington in back-to-back home games, and that was a lot of fun to watch. And Washington, I believe, was on the verge of making the playoffs, and we kind of screwed it up for them, sadly. And they made some mistakes too. Obviously, they're I think they intercepted the ball and fumbled way too much, and they shouldn't have. And I will say, but that's kind of the one thing I won't miss about the Pac-12 is the Pac-12 beating on each other because the biggest enemy to Pac-12 teams when it comes to getting to the playoff is Pac-12 teams. Like ASU, the year they beat Utah and Notre Dame, they were literally on the verge of making the playoff. They were the first two out, right behind TCU in the college football top 25 rankings. And then all of a sudden, they drop a really bad loss to Oregon State and their playoff dreams are crushed. it's it
Yeah.
happens to everyone. And who knows, maybe this curse will be broken when they get to the Big 12 and wipe the slate clean. But yeah, I will say that win against Washington. Also, the Pac-12 championship. Actually, this will probably be my favorite all time when we had the Pac-12 championship at Sun Devil Stadium, because Sun
Mhm.
Devil Stadium, ever since State Farm Stadium opened with the Cardinals, they kind of took over the Fiesta Bowl. All the big events went to there. And so when they had the Pac-12 championship there, that was like the first major event there since, the Cardinals left all that outside of ASU football, of course. And that was amazing to see. It was kind of reminded me of the Arena Bowl where the site would not be determined until the matchup was set. And the team going into the matchup with the highest seed would get to host the game. I thought that was amazing, amazing to see because it encourages the teams to even fight harder to have the better record going into the matchup because then they have the home field advantage. And even though ASU lost that game, it was an amazing, amazing atmosphere going into Sun Devil Stadium. The way they designed the game, like game experience wise, they kind of treated it like it was a neutral site game. So you wouldn't see the fireworks go off if ASU scored a touchdown and stuff like that. But no, the way they set it up, they really made it feel like it was like the ultimate home game experience. And we'll probably get to experience that with the quarterfinal, with the college football playoff expansion being at highest seed. I'm really looking forward to that. But that will probably be my most favorite memory of all the Pac-12 was having the championship, the last highest seed Pac-12 football championship at Sun Devil Stadium. Even though we lost to Stanford, that was so freaking memorable and of course very damn cold. But no, that was awesome to witness. Um, but now the biggest question is, as we bring this conversation to a close, what's next? And it's obvious ASU, U of A, Utah are officially going big, uh, pun intended, of course. But if anything, my thoughts on the future of ASU, I'm excited. This is honestly, it could not be more of an exciting time. This isn't going to kill tradition and all of that. The Pac-12 was unfortunately kind of it was already like a Walking Dead conference. The Pac-12 that we knew faded away almost 10 years ago. It was time to change things up, and we're finally getting to see this because with college football scheduling now, it's too boring. It's too wimpy. You're seeing all these teams play teams close to each other, and this applies to teams like Alabama too. Like you'll never see Alabama go out west during the regular season. You never see that. The only time they'll actually play a legitimate tough West Coast competitor would be in the playoff. And if all you need to do is just prepare for that one game, I mean, Nick Saban knows how to slaughter a really good team when it comes to just the one game opportunity. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to ASU actually traveling more out to the East Coast, and we're really going to get to see a lot more battle with all other areas of the U.S., not just the West, but the Midwest. Even Northeast with Cincinnati. And not only that, UCF, my second hometown of Orlando, um,
Mm,
University of Central Florida, which they've started to become a powerhouse. I mean, they've had history here in Arizona too. They won a Fiesta Bowl here, which was their biggest moment in their program's history. So I'm very much looking forward to it. I think regular season schedules are going to get a lot more competitive, as they should be, because it shouldn't be just this boring fest of just playing the closest teams to you. And they'll obviously do that with divisional opponents. Like, it's not going to really surprise me if we see ASU going to BYU and Utah a lot more often now, but there is some situations I think they'll definitely be playing more out east and covering more territories, which is what they should be doing. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I'll miss going to venues like the Rose Bowl. Like, every college football
yeah.
team dreams of going to play at the Rose Bowl Stadium. ASU got to do that every other year as a regular season game. So it's unfortunate we won't get to see that, but unfortunately, it's just one of those situations you can't have it all. You gotta let go of something, and that's gonna be one of them. But we're gonna have some new rivalries brewing from the state of Texas, which I know
Oh
you're
yeah.
very amped up about. And now that we're gonna get to see Cincinnati, which has some Arizona history. Arizona Rattlers quarterback Nick Davila came from the Cincinnati Bearcats. That's where he got his start.
Hmm.
Um, and the UCF, like I mentioned earlier. So I like I said, it couldn't be more exciting, and that's just football itself. When it comes to just going more outgoing, there's also the bowl games. There's a whole different lineup of bowl games that ASU could go to now. They can go to Houston. They can go. I believe like the Music City Bowl has a Big 12 tie-in, or at least maybe not anymore. But you'll get to see some bowl games that ASU has never even been to before, which I'm looking forward to that. Of course, that might change with the Pac-12 dissolving or however that ends up. But no, it's a very exciting time, and that's just football alone. Basketball, on the other hand, is going to be a whole different challenge. It might take ASU maybe a couple years to adapt to that, but no, this is change that needed to happen, and this is exciting change. This is going to be a huge win for the fans, and it's going to get a lot more competitive, as it should be, in the desert. And looking forward to seeing that and all the new fan bases come in. It is exciting as ever right now.
Yeah, it'll be fun, for I know there's a ton of Sun Devil fans and out there, and they're going to be able to go to all these different places, and I think that's so cool, especially as a guy, growing up in Texas, lived here in Texas my whole life. These fans will be able to come to like Waco for Baylor games, Lubbock to see them play Texas Tech. You think about Lawrence, Kansas, all these different, college towns with their own different cultures, own different traditions. It's gonna be very cool. And then also these other fans are going to be able to come to Tempe and have the Chuck Box, and they can get introduced to that because that's what really matters. But no, seriously, like they'll be able to come to Tempe, see what Phoenix has to offer. It's kind of cool. They'll be able to see what ASU is like as well. It kind of goes both ways. But yeah, you're right. It's a very exciting time. Again, like I said, that I'm thankful that Michael Crow and Ray Anderson did the right thing, and they didn't get left in the dust, and that's what's mostly important. But it's gonna be crazy, man. It's gonna be fun. I got some friends who are at some of these Texas schools. I have two very good friends at Texas Tech, and I know that ASU and Texas Tech have a bit of history against each other in football. If you remember when ASU, it was when Patrick Mahomes was with Texas Tech. ASU and Tech had this thriller of a game in 2016. ASU won 68-55. Kalen Balaj tied an NCAA record with 8 touchdowns. It was just crazy. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm hoping maybe a little rivalry can develop there. And of course, we have the Territorial Cup in the Big 12 now. So it's going to be fun, man. I'm excited. I'm excited as well.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing to keep note of. The most important rivalry games at all, including the Territorial Cup, is not going away anytime soon. It's not going to be affected by these changes. So we're going to get to keep some of the old classic rivalries, and we're going to get to bring in some new ones, and of course some unfinished business. Because you mentioned that Texas Tech game, which I was at that game. That was another fun game to be at Sun Devil Stadium. The following year, and when they traveled to Lubbock, they lost all that, which was a very tough game. I believe that might have been Todd Graham's last year before Herm Edwards took over. But yeah, that was who knows? I mean, they're 1-1 against each other. I want to see a rubber match at least.
Oh yeah.
Um, and we definitely will now for sure. Now that they're officially accepted into the Big 12. So, like I said, it is a very, very exciting time to be a Sun Devil fan. It's going to be a lot more competitive. You're going to get to see some new team fan bases and some new destinations. I mean, come on. I mean, who doesn't want to go to Orlando and that same weekend, lean up to the game or after the game, maybe going on a trip to Disney World or Universal Studios?
Yes.
Like, why
Yes.
not? Come on.
Exactly. Good. Universal as well.
Yeah, it's just like there's gonna be so many cool stuff to do, cool locations to go. It is in some ways gonna be just as exciting, if not more exciting than what they had in the Pac-12. It is amazing. Any last words, man, as we close this emergency pod? Because next
Yeah,
talk
I
will
actually, so I just want to mention something, if you take a look at this year's ASU
oh,
football
that's
schedule,
yeah, they're gonna get a taste of it this year at Oklahoma
yeah,
State.
they will play Oklahoma. Oklahoma State is coming to Tempe. So
Yeah.
that I think that's their I want to say that that's like their second game of the season after that Southern Utah game. So that's I'm telling you that game is now marked on the calendar. So technically, not officially, but technically, that is ASU getting their first taste of of Big 12 football, and I guess obviously with ASU going into the Big 12 next year. But of course, I mean, it's funny because OSU and ASU played each other last year in Stillwater, and the Cowboys won that one. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in this one with that kind of that added flair of of seeing this matchup more often in the future in the Big 12. So I think that's going to be an interesting matchup. But overall, man, like I said, just crazy times, pretty exciting. And it'll be a crazy final year for ASU in the Pac 12, which will also be, of course, Dillingham's first year as head coach. So it'll be a fun year in Tempe, I'll tell you that.
It will be interesting, and literally, it's not like we'll have to wait long to see what competition will be like in the Big 12 because, like you said, and thanks for mentioning this, I almost forgot. They're going to get to play Oklahoma State as the second home game, so we're literally going to get to see right out of the gate what competition is going to be like this year, even though the transition to the Big 12 won't be until next year. So very much looking forward to that. Like I said, basketball is going to be a challenge, but Kenny Dillingham literally could not be in a more perfect position to be the leader in football in the Big 12. So there's a lot of big opportunity. We just got to see if ASU is going to take the bull by the horns, and I think they will. This is a very historic school, and with all this competition coming in, man, bring it on. I'm all for it. So that's going to do it. Our next time we'll be talking to you will be near college football season. And of course, we'll be having a new look with our graphics and the way we present videos to you. So stay tuned for that. But for Sam Valenti, I'm Caleb Bushy saying good night for now.